On today's episode of Phinside The NFL, Tua Tagovailoa has officially been moved to injured reserve. We will talk about that move in depth, plus a few other things, including if Huntley really has a shot at dethroning Skylar Thompson for the quarterback 2 job in Miami. Plus, should the Miami Dolphins make a move for Bryce Young after he was benched, considering they need to start legitimately thinking about a contingency plan given Tua's injury history? We will talk about all this and more on this episode, which is powered by BetUS. So do me the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, and let's get into this.
Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it!
You have got to be kidding me.
Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score!
Field on the near side, man open. Touchdown!
The run from Tua Tagovailoa.
Touchdown!
He's going deep. He's got it for the touchdown again.
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan.
Let's go!
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back here for another one as I welcome you all in on today's episode. As you're new here, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. Make sure you have that notification bell turned on so you never miss a moment when we go live. Off the heels of signing Tyler Huntley yesterday, we got a lot to talk about. Appreciate all of you for coming out and showing love to that video. Hey man, I know it's tough times in Dolphin land, and it's gonna get potentially a little bit darker before it gets brighter, but hey, we've been through worse. We've been through this before. We've made it through. We've made the playoffs with Tua being concussed twice in one season. This roster is good enough where they can win 2 of the next 4 games. So we are going to talk about it all today. Again, appreciate all of you coming through. I see people in the chat already saying, Mike wearing a sweatshirt in 100-degree weather is messed up. He needs to design plays and have someone else call them. Listen, I've said you have the play caller in the building if you want to make this move. I've said it from day one. It is Darrell Bevell. That is the dude. If you want to make a move and you want a legitimate play caller, it's Darrell Bevell. The problem is, what do you do with Frank Smith? Because here's the issue we have with Frank Smith. Frank Smith has no experience calling plays. Darrell Bevell led a top 5 offense in Seattle under Russell Wilson. Darrell Bevell is the guy you would want. You would basically have to move off of Frank Smith, promote Darrell Bevell to OC, which I'm not going to lie, I'm fine with. And then you would have to turn around and promote behind him. And I think Wes Welker would be one of the first in line for those promotions. So, it's kind of a odd situation they're in. You know what I mean? And remember, Darrell Bevell's a guy who he's given up, right? He's given up opportunities at other positions to stay here with Tua and Mike McDaniel. He's turned down interviews to stay in Miami and stay with Tua and McDaniel. So, that's personally, if you're going to move, because this is what I think is going to happen. Let me lay it out for you guys. If we don't make the playoffs this year or it all implodes, I truly do believe Chris Grier is going to get fired. I think a new GM is going to come in here. They're going to turn to McDaniel and everyone. They're going to replace the scouting staff with their guys. They're going to turn around and they're going to say, listen, here's the deal. I will give you a chance because we all know the potential you have as a head coach in this league. I will give you the opportunity to continue on with the Miami Dolphins, but you're going to have to give up play calling. You're going to have to concede on a few things, including I'll listen to what you have to say for the draft, but it's my decision. And I'll be the first one to say, if you are moving off of Chris Grier in the summer, you need to go get Louis Riddick. But, we are going to talk about it here too. The Miami Dolphins need a legitimate contingency plan in place. And we're going to talk about one name specific today. But, I've been on record saying I love Jackson Dart. I'm a Jackson Dart guy. I think right now he might be a high second round pick. He might sneak into the first by the time it's all said and done. I mean, we've seen Cam Ward steamroll up boards. You know what I mean? Quinn Ewers got hurt and Arch Manning came in, so we don't know what the deal is with Quinn Ewers and how that's going to affect his draft status. But listen, you are going to need a legitimate contingency plan. And here's the thing. This is not something new. Remember in the offseason, heading into the 2023 season last year, I was pounding the table. I wanted Baker Mayfield as our backup. I wanted a legitimate contingency plan in 2023. Now that this has happened again, I want a legitimate contingency plan even more. It sucks because when you get to the draft, it's weird. I think Carson Beck and Cam Ward will be too rich in terms of moving up. Garrett Nussmeier is probably not going to declare. He's probably going to go back to LSU and then try to be one of the top quarterbacks taken next year. Obviously, I like Jackson Dart. I've already said this. Shedeur Sanders, I'm a fan of the player. There's certain things about his game that needs work, but they're all prospects to do. But I don't like his attitude, throwing the offensive line under the bus after a loss a few weeks ago, and then after the win against Colorado State, going and handling yourself the way you did against the opposing quarterback at midfield. No, you got to conduct yourself a way better. Jalen Milroe has a very intriguing ceiling. Drew Aller has a very intriguing as a prospect as well. So there's options when you get to the draft. I don't think the draft is as weak as people are making it out to be for quarterbacks. I'll say that. I think there's at least 6 or 7 legitimate options here. But again, with the contingency plan, you don't need to spend a first round pick. I think that first round pick needs to be focused on, you need to add another offensive lineman. And in regards, or, if a stud receiver falls and, you need the contingency plan in place for when you're moving off of Tyreek Hill, that makes sense too. But, remember, the Eagles, fresh off Carson Wentz's contract, but he had an injury history. What'd they do? They drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round. I'm down for you to spend a second or third round pick on this contingency plan and develop someone. No longer take a flyer on a 6th or 7th rounder like they did with Skylar Thompson. Get a legitimate option that you can mold in your, in the shape of what you view a quarterback from the moment they're drafted to finish should be in this offense. And then ride it out and see what Tua does next year in terms of staying healthy. But I really think they need to add a legitimate contingency plan. I said it last year. Remember, I was pounding the table for Baker Mayfield, and look what Baker Mayfield's turned into right now. So, no one can sit there and say Reason doesn't want competition for Tua, or Reason is afraid of bringing in a legitimate number one. No. I've been calling for a legitimate number one since last offseason. Because you need it, and just in case. Because the problem is where we're at with this roster build. The expectations. The money that's been spent. Listen, this is going to sound cold, but this is what the reality is. If someone goes down, doesn't matter whether it's a quarterback, receiver, tight end, there is too much on the line. You have to be able to have confidence in the next man up coming in and being able to keep rolling through that schedule. And I don't think, we've seen Skylar in this offense for 3 years. A lot of us don't have a ton of faith in Skylar Thompson. We know what Skylar Thompson's limits are. Not good in anticipation, right? Doesn't process very fast. Reads defenses pretty slowly. Touch throws on the deep level are his thing, but when you get to the short to intermediate level, I mean, we've seen since he was a rookie and he was slinging it to Tanner Connor when his Tanner Connor was like 6, 7, 8 yards ahead of him, and he's ripping a rifle when you need to touch it to him so he can make the completion in that Jets game in year 1. So we've seen the touch issues. We've seen the intangible issues with Skylar Thompson in this offense. Now, could Skylar come out? And yes, can get reckless with the ball. I agree. Can Skylar come out and be a totally different guy than what we've seen in the preseason and what we've seen in years before? Sure, anything's possible. But this is a talented enough team that even without Tua Tagovailoa, we should be able to win 2 out of the next 4 games. That's it. And shout out to Vic Fangio. Absolutely blowing it in Philadelphia. I mean, wasn't that absolutely hilarious? Who saw that, huh? That was absolutely hilarious how Monday night ended, eh? The Eagles got a little bit of a taste. The Eagles got a little bit of a taste of what we had to deal with. That's just a fact. In that Tennessee game, they felt it. They felt it. They got a little bit of a taste of what we had to go through in terms of, up by a couple scores, and look what ends up happening to us. Look what ends up happening to us. Right? Like, absolutely brutal. Fangio gonna Fangio. Fangio's defense is gonna Fangio, ain't it? I think it's absolutely hilarious. I'm not even going to lie. I think it's absolutely freaking hilarious. I'm not going to lie. I was sitting there laughing my face off as this all went down. I think it's an absolute joke that, Fangio, it really does seem like the game might have started to pass Fangio by a little bit. So, yeah, brutal. For the Eagles fans, not for us. This fan base is officially cooked. I just had to explain to people the difference between relying on your QB and being dependent on your QB. I mean, this fan base has been cooked. I mean, you got people out here believing that wins are not a quarterback stat, but somehow losses are. Figure this one out. It's the most backwards shit I've ever seen in my life. It's absolutely a joke. It's absolutely a joke. I don't know what else to say. It's literally like such a joke that people will believe this stuff. But hey, this is the world we're in right now, right? This is literally where we're at. Guys, like I said, this episode is powered by BetUS. Go on, head over to betus.com. They've got the lines out, the early spreads and money lines for this Thursday with the Patriots and the Jets. Any game you want to bet on, it is here right in front of your eyes. You can see right here, they got the Miami Dolphins as 4.5-point underdogs on the road. This is the first time the Miami Dolphins have been underdogs this season. And when you use BetUS, your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 will be matched by 150%. All you got to do is use YouTube 150. Use code YouTube 150 for 150% deposit match on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. We're gonna take the Dolphins right here. We're gonna take the Dolphins on the money line and on the spread. I don't care, bro. You know what? Let's up it. Let's take $25 on each because that's where we're at. So we got it. We're gonna take that. Make sure you head over to BetUS. place your bets, use code YouTube150, but also please remember, gamble responsibly. All right, we got a lot to get into. So before we do, Knight says, funny how Fangio does it again, but when I said we gave up the 11th most points in the NFL, over 100 more points than the Ravens and Chief, X came from... Yo, bro, listen. I was looking through yesterday. That's Garrett Nussmeier. I'm a big fan of Garrett Nussmeier. Garrett Nussmeier, he's draft eligible. Him and Jackson Dart are two of my favorites of this class that are eligible, but I think Nussmeier is going to go back to school. Listen... hey, X came for me when I said the Baker deal was bad. And it was clearly a bad deal for us. So that's just how it works, bro. That's literally how it works. So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that's just it. They come in the troves over there. So, yet they don't run the people that deserve to be run out of this community. They don't go after that. So, anyways, let's get into it. We got a lot to go over here, and let's start off with the Miami Dolphins and them announcing today that they have placed Tua Tagovailoa on the reserved injured list, and they've made the Tyler Huntley signing official. But look at this, they've signed Jackson Carman to the practice squad, and they've released Robbie Chosen that quick. Bye Robbie, see ya Robbie. All right. A couple things here. Number one, if you were a Patreon or a channel member, you know that I had been privately, the things that I heard, Tua Tagovailoa didn't want to go on IR till he started meeting with neurologists. Now, I had always felt the team was going to make this move anyways, because even if Tua was the original target dates I heard were the Titans and the Patriots games. And even I was like, okay, that's 18 and 24 days. That might be cutting it a little close for the optics of the Miami Dolphins in the NFL. Sure enough, I think they've shut him down and thrown him on IR to protect him from himself. Because from what I understand, they're going to neurologists to get a timeline. It's not so much about if he's going to retire or walk away from the game. And I think they were like, listen, we can't have this guy on Monday night, 18 days removed or, cleared and coming back out there. I think, last time they really learned from how it all went down. And so now it's a minimum of 4 games Tua Tagovailoa is going to miss. And the reality of the situation is this. He's going to miss the Seahawks this week. He's going to miss the Titans in week 4. He's going to miss the Patriots in week 5. Then he's going to have a bye. And then he's going to miss the Colts game. So technically, he's going to be missing about 5 weeks. So technically, this gives him a 5-week window to return. And I've said from the beginning, I've been consistent. I think he's going to come back for the Arizona game. And this is lining up for a week 8 return against, and that's the earliest he could return, is against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, you talk about the Seahawks, you talk about the Titans, you talk about the Patriots, and then a bye, and then the Colts. Ladies and gentlemen, the Miami Dolphins, with the talent they have on this roster, should be able to win 2 out of those 4 games. I'm sorry, you just should. Do I like our chances traveling to Seattle this week against a 2-0 team on the West Coast? Not particularly. But you look at the Titans. Will Levis has made game-altering and game-costing mistakes the last 2 weeks. The Patriots are not an easy out. They're playing good ball right now. Then you got a bye. And then you got the Colts with Anthony Richardson, who he's making some mistakes. Anthony Richardson is definitely making some mistakes. I think it should be legitimately, with the talent on this team, this is going to come down to coaching. You should be able to win 2 of these games. You should be able to turn Skylar Thompson into a game manager, make the throws when they present themselves. Don't turn the ball over. Run the ball effectively, and we need the defense to be big these next 4 games. And then on the flip side, if this weekend is ugly for Skylar Thompson, you'll probably see Tyler Huntley on Monday Night Football. That's a realistic possibility as well. You may see him on Monday Night Football if Skylar truly, really struggles this week. So, we need to play. I mean, you got enough talent on this team. You should be able to win some games here. You should not come out of the stretch 1-5. And if you do come out of this 1-5, what's the point of even bringing Tua back? Now, on the flip side, Robbie Chosen getting cut and Jackson Carman being signed to the practice squad. Okay, no, I don't think Tua is going to be on the sidelines. I don't think he's going to get on a plane and travel. Jackson Carman. I remember him coming out in his draft. I remember he played at Clemson. Right? And you know, he was drafted in 2021 in the second round. They were 46th overall. I remember being quite high on him actually coming out. Right? He came out in the Trevor Lawrence draft. I remember being quite high on Jackson Carman when he came out. So I'm intrigued by them signing Jackson Carman. Now, obviously, he's been with the Bengals. That's who he was drafted by, right? Again, second round pick. And, you know, he got 3 holding penalties and 1 false start during the Bengals' first preseason game, and he ended up being waived on August 23rd. I'm actually very intrigued. Titans have the number 1 defense at the moment. Levis and offense will be fixed before we meet you bums. Tighten up. Hey, man. I mean, listen, you're not going to find a bigger Will Levis fan in the Dolphins community than me. Everyone knows that. But, yeah, just like you won't find a bigger Jaden Daniels or Michael Penix fan out of this last draft in this class than me, and Drake May as well. Huge fan of all 3 of those players. Jaden Daniels looks like the best quarterback in that class. But anyways, Levis is making bonehead mistakes. All right? Boneheaded mistakes. So, you know, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think we lose the next 4 easily by any stretch of the imagination. That offense in Tennessee is very questionable. Anthony Richardson in the Colts offense, very questionable. We've had the Patriots number under McDaniel as well. Now, this week, I don't like our chances in Seattle. I'm going to be just honest with you guys. But I am intrigued by the Miami Dolphins adding Jackson Carman to the fray. Left tackle at Clemson. And then when you look at him and what he's done in, Cincinnati, hasn't obviously been perfect in terms of how it worked out. He ended up getting waived this year. But I'm very intrigued, very intrigued. The fact of the matter is this, are they going to maybe try him out a guard? 6'5", 322. Does not have a ton of playing time over his course in Cincinnati. He played a lot in year 1. Struggled in year 1. He allowed 19 pressures on about 298 pass blocking snaps. He was tried at left guard. He was tried at right guard. They moved him around a little bit, right? And then the last 2 years, he's been primarily moved back to left tackle in Cincinnati. So he's been flexed to left guard. He's been flexed to right guard. Struggled a little bit there. In year 2, when he was at left tackle, back to left tackle in year 2, he had 168 snaps at left tackle. 113 of those were pass block snaps, and he allowed about 7 pressures. Now, he's only allowed 1 sack. So, but I got to go back and find my scouting report on him because that's a while ago. But, we'll see. We'll see. I'm interested to see what they can do with him. Let me be honest with you. I like Jackson Carman's upside more than, what's their faces? Robert Jones and Lester Cotton. Not even close. Miami is winning the next 4. Absolutely quote me on it. LOL, says Griffin Gaming. You've been quoted, brother. You've been put live on YouTube for everyone to see. So your take is officially out there, Griffin. Let's hope you're right. Because if we come out 5-1, oh boy. But there's a lot of stuff to fix beyond Tua Tagovailoa, right? Now we're probably going to be seeing more stacked boxes. Now you're not going to have the cover 2 shells as much because defenses aren't going to believe Skylar can beat them over the top. So now you're really going to have to figure something out. You're going to have to run the ball, which, the Dolphins have had some success in running the ball minus any short, 3rd and short or 4th and short situation. But for the majority, they've had good success running the ball when they've wanted to. Achan's masked a lot with his great vision, his speed, his ability to make himself skinny through the holes. He's been very effective, whether it's been off the edge or hitting the gaps. So, you are now going to face heavier boxes more than likely. So, Skylar's going to have to be on point. Now we're kind of in a little bit of a reverse, right? Teams went from with Tua daring us to try and beat them over the top and take the easy stuff underneath, whether it's a run or a pass. Now it's flipped. Now they're going to be stacking the boxes and they're going to be daring us. Try to run the ball and try to beat us over top and get us out of these boxes. That's just a fact of the matter. Now, I do want to say this. Run blocking has been more of our strength than pass blocking. So does that work for us? Does that fit into what we do? Yeah, a little bit. But we got to see what the operator of the offense, Skylar Thompson can do. So, and we're going to see. We're going to see what McDaniel has planned. Now McDaniel, the coaching is on you. You didn't show us the patience because we go back to this Buffalo game. They knew they were going to face a bunch of cover 2 and all those 2 high shells. They knew that was coming. The problem was we made mistakes. And when you're in a game like that, you can't afford to make mistakes. And I'll tell you why. Because when you got that 2 high shell and you got to run and take the underneath stuff, the meshes, the level concepts, all that kind of stuff, you basically got to earn the deep shots. You have to earn them. And you can't turn the ball over and have those turnovers turned into points and get behind the 8 ball, because then you're going to be forced to play into their hands. You're going to be forced to push the ball as you get into the 3rd and 4th quarter and you're down by more than 2 scores. You need to keep that. When you're facing those 2 high shells, that game needs to be kept tight. You need the defense to be on point. You need to play mistake-free offensive football so you don't put the defense in precarious positions where they can give up points. You need to then run the football patiently, and you need to take all the short stuff the defense gives you underneath, and you got to convert first, and you got to move the ball that way. You're going to win the time of possession, and it's going to take longer to get points on the board, but you got to do that for the first 2 or 3 quarters. So then come late in the 3rd or in the 4th, you can start catching them slipping, right? You can start catching them sitting on the stuff underneath, trying to catch, going heavy against the run, and you catch them over the top. That's when you hit them over the top. But we just don't show the patience. We just don't. And that comes down to coaching. Now, Tua made some mistakes that were not coaching's problem, i.e. that third interception was absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. Sailing the second throw, rushing your progress, rushing the process to Robbie Chosen. Did Robbie Chosen run the wrong route? We don't know. We're not flies on the wall. We're not in the building. You cannot have those mistakes when a team is daring you to take the underneath stuff, because it's going to take, drives that would take 3 or 4 minutes to go down the field and get points. They're now going to take 6, 7 minutes to get down the field. Exactly, Alpad. McDaniel needs to be okay with 3.5 yards per carry in those games. Those games, early on, you need to run the ball and play for the sticks as a passer. That's it. Instead of trying to shoot these sail concepts, etc., etc. Now, there were throws downfield where Tua missed, i.e., the deep out to Tyreek let him too far out of bounds. That was bad on Tua. And hopefully with Robbie Chosen being waived, does that mean Malik's coming back? Does that mean, does that mean Malik's coming back? Please, God. Because Skylar and Malik worked a lot together. Because remember, OBJ can't come back until after week 4. And that's another thing. Skylar Thompson is going to get even more help coming his way. He's going to get OBJ coming his way. Malik coming his way. Or Huntley if he takes a starting job. So there's help on the way for our backup. There's even more talent on the way for our backup quarterbacks. The problem we're relying at, and I addressed this yesterday, is where are we at with the Armstead injury? Kendall Lamb did not look good in relief. Do you start Patrick Paul? The problem is now you are playing with the blind side of your 2 quarterbacks who can start for you on the roster. Huntley and Thompson are both right-handed quarterbacks. This is no longer a left tackle to the open side of Tua. Now you're dealing with a blind side protector. So, we will see. We will see. All right? And it's going to be very interesting to see how this week develops. I see someone said in the chat, is Malik playing? I hope so, but I don't know yet. I have no idea yet. I just don't. We haven't got our first injury report of the week. That injury report will come out tomorrow. So we will see on the injury report where Malik is at tomorrow. Tough stuff here. So, more on Tua Tagovailoa being placed on IR. Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa will be placed on injured reserve according to the Miami Dolphins. This comes less than a week after Tua Tagovailoa sustained a concussion during the Dolphins' 31-10 loss to the Buffalo Bills. The franchise quarterback will miss the next 4 games and be eligible to return after the Dolphins' October 20th matchup against the Indianapolis Colts. Tagovailoa went down in the third quarter of Thursday's game against the Bills when he attempted to scramble on a crucial 4th down near the red zone. While diving headfirst for the first down marker, Tagovailoa collided with Bills safety Damar Hamlin's abdomen. Tagovailoa laid on the ground for several minutes after the hit, but was able to walk off the field on his own. It's just an unfair situation, Alec Ingold said after the Bills game. You always take every game as an opportunity to do what you love to do and what you're made to do. You hope everything moving forward can be as positive as possible, uplifting every single human being in this locker room, praying for safety and health for everybody on the field always. Obviously, it's tough to see your leader go down like that. The latest concussion was Tagovailoa's 3rd in 2 years. After speculation swirled that the former Alabama star would retire, Ian Rappaport reported on Sunday that Tagovailoa will meet with concussion specialists with the hopes of returning to the field. Quote, my understanding is Tua Tagovailoa has no plans to retire, Rappaport said. No plans to retire. His eyes are ready on returning to the football field. As far as when that goes, we simply do not know. Every concussion is different. With Tagovailoa headed to the injured reserve, the Dolphins have only 2 healthy quarterbacks on the roster. Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley, who the team signed off of the Baltimore Ravens practice squad on Monday. A third quarterback, Tim Boyle, remains on the practice squad. Thompson and Huntley haven't particularly wowed as starters. They each have sub-500 records, but the latter does have a Pro Bowl appearance after taking over for Lamar Jackson with the Ravens in 2022. Huntley's ability to step up in Jackson's absence was one of the aspects that appealed to the Dolphins. Coach Mike McDaniel said Monday afternoon, though he remained committed to Thompson as the starter. He was replacing the league MVP, McDaniel said, and you could tell from far away that he was a guy that the team absolutely believed he could lead them to victory. I think he's a very huge, tangible thing for a non-QB1. Adam McDaniel, this was not a move in any way, shape, or form, is not any direct reflection on Skylar as Tua's backup. This was more for depth. I do think that it helps the dynamics of the room to give another guy with starting history to this team. The concussion couldn't have come at a worse time for Tagovailoa. After leading the league in passing and making his first Pro Bowl in 2023, Tagovailoa signed a 4-year, $212.4 million contract extension in the early days of training camp. Now that all of this is done, this is behind us, we know heavy is the crown, so whoever's wearing that, Tagovailoa said at the time. Like right now, I'm the highest paid employee in this office. I've got to get my whatever together. I've got to get that right and get our guys moving in the direction that we need to go to be able to do a few things. So a few things to break down here. Okay, a few things to break down here. All right, because first of all, with Tua Tagovailoa, all right, it just is what it is. I mean, like I said, last year, and I'll say it again, you need a legitimate contingency plan in place. And he's got no plans to retire. He will be back. That's number one. Number two, you heard the quote there from Mike McDaniel in the chat. Here is the thing, he basically told you that right now, Tyler Huntley, he is a backup to Skylar Thompson. Right now, he told you he's not coming in to directly compete with Skylar Thompson. Don't know how I feel about that. I think this guy filled in for the MVP and was legitimate when he filled in for the MVP. Now, I had someone ask me today, reason, I don't get it. Someone said to me today, reason, I don't get what the hype is about the Huntley signing. His stats aren't that great. The offense is hard to learn. Here's the thing. This is why I think you're seeing a little bit of excitement around Huntley. We know how bad the offensive line is. You got a player that can create out of structure when that line breaks down. Now, can Thompson do that with his legs? Sure, he can create out of structure, but he's not as exciting out of structure as a guy like Tyler Huntley. I think that's where, and we've seen him, again, like McDaniel said, he filled in for the MVP, and he filled in admirably for the MVP. Right? He gave the Bengals a run for their money in that playoff game. So, that's why I think you're seeing a little bit of excitement. We know how bad the offensive line is. We know it's too late and they're not going to get it figured out right now. So what does that mean? All right, we got someone who can create out of structure. And if the offensive line doesn't do their job, at least we got a guy who can extend the play and make stuff happen. That's why you're seeing a little bit of excitement with Tyler Huntley. We got a legitimate out of structure guy. Plus, he's got an arm, and he's shown he can play in structure when he needs to. So, and I think we all agree at this stage in their career, Tyler Huntley is a better and more legitimate starting option than Skylar Thompson. But again, Skylar Thompson could come out this weekend and be a world beater, be better than what we saw in the preseason, and be better than what we've seen in years prior. Anything can happen. I'm not taking that away from Skylar. But just based off of the information we have, I think a lot of us have more faith in Tyler Huntley because of his ability to extend after everything breaks down out of structure, because we all don't trust the offensive line. Skylar has legs. He can make plays, but he can't make plays like Tyler Huntley out of structure. So that's where I think that comes from. So that's where I think the excitement is. Now, listen, McDaniel said what he said, that he's brought in as depth, et cetera, et cetera. If Skylar Thompson struggles this weekend, you best believe they are going to look at yanking him in the second game. Or if it's bad, they'll yank him in, the Seattle game if it gets really out of hand, which I don't think it will. But, that's why they've added an option who can start. And I've said this. I commended them for this. I tipped my hat to them for this. You went out and got another guy. You didn't go get me a CJ Beathard. I mean, that would have been a joke. You're not relying and elevating Tim Boyle. That would have told me you're not taking it seriously. You went out and got a guy who you can win games with in Tyler Huntley if Skylar Thompson shows he's not good enough to win games with. And you didn't have to give up assets. Which, again, that leads you to believe the fact that they didn't give up assets for a Jameis Winston, for a Davis Mills, who's in Slowick's offense for the second year, which is an offshoot of our offense. You didn't give up assets for a guy like Sam Howell. This tells me that they believe Tua is going to be back. So we'll see. We will see. Merril Hoge was on with Josh Mosier, and he talked about Tua. And then after this, we're going to start to get into a few other things. So let's see what Merril Hoge had to say regarding Tua. Remember, Merril Hoge was forced to medically retire from the NFL. So this is what he had to say.
For more insight on Tua Tagovailoa, we bring in a special guest this evening to Lexus Sports Extra, NFL vet, accomplished author, and longtime sports commentator, Merril Hoge. Merril, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Josh, it's my pleasure.
You were the first person to retire from the NFL in 1994 due to post-concussion syndrome. There may be no better person than you to understand what Tua is going through. In your opinion, what should he do?
Well, I think the very first thing you got to do, in all fairness, is get better, recover. And in that process, there's going to be a lot of answers for Tua, because they're going to go through a variety of things. And, people want him to be trying. Listen, that's one thing that brings every player together, regardless of when you played or if you're currently playing, no matter what your team you're playing, is, for the health of a player. The physical aspect of football is not to hurt people or maim people, but it is part of the challenge of playing the game. So when this happens, that's what you find, players rally for each player, and they just want the best for Tua.
In your personal situation, you were forced to medically retire. Then you successfully sued the Bears
12
medical
concussions
staff for
he had.
improper care. Different doctors have varying opinions. What roles do independent neurologists and team doctors have in the final decision to be cleared?
Well, listen, everything under the umbrella care is a critical step, and that process is going to give Tua answers. Here are three things that they're going to do and they need to do, and Tua will make sure that they do. If they don't, he can go get another doctor to get a second opinion, and that's one thing that I think people forget. Tua has a right to do that. He's done that, and actually I'll get to that in a second. But the first thing they'll look for is the MRI, and is there any permanent type of tissue damage. Now, I highly doubt it based on what type of collision took place. But if there is, Tua would not be. They would not clear him to return to play. And then three things are going to be treated and cared for and repaired, and that's going to be his cognitive, his visual, and his stability. Now, if any one of those three things don't recover, and you can tell that his vestibular or his visual area has not recovered, having issues with that, cognitive issues are a concern, or even stability or gait, they won't allow him to return to play. That would not clear him. And then the one thing that he does have that I think is an advantage in this case is the recovery, the history of recovery. He already has had a few situations, and there's a certain length of recovery. Is that recovery a lot longer than the recovery he's had in the past? He'll be able to use that to gauge from those evaluations if he should retire. Let's just say he completely recovers, and there's amazing tools now and recovery abilities, and that's what we want for all people who have some type of head trauma before you return back to your environment. Let's say he clears all that up. Tua can still opt out, and there was absolutely nobody that would blame him for doing that.
As we sit here right now, we don't know if Tua will play again, as we're discussing, but just as a former player, how important is it to end your career on your own terms?
is a hard challenge to end it not on your terms. Now, that being said, there's one thing that I always put, and I think a lot of players put a perspective on, is I'm not going to jeopardize my long-term health for a game day or a check. And I'm sure Tua has those same thoughts, and that's the way that you have to value your long-term health. And I think the thing that will put it most in perspective for him, clearly helped me, is that you look at your kids. You just look at your kids, and do you want to be there and be a part of their life and evolve them and help them and grow with them and love them and be there for them.
Merril, we thank you so much for the insight. We appreciate you spending the time with us here on Lexus Sports Extra this evening. Thank you so much.
So, I mean, remember, Merril Hoge went through it, all right? Like, you're talking about a guy, he had to learn to read again. He experienced memory loss, confusion, and headaches. He sued the Bears and he won a team doctor. He won $1.5 million. 12 concussions for Merril Hoge. That man's actually been through it. Again, Tua seems pretty dead set that he's coming back, that this isn't it. That it's not over. He's coming back. And you saw Merril Hoge, like, if there's certain things they see, they just will not clear him. Like, if there's tissue damage on his brain, they just will not clear him. So it seems like Tua's going to be back, and you can expect him, the earliest he can return is after the Arizona game. And it really comes down to post-concussion syndrome, right? Like, this is what happened with, I always bring up Sidney Crosby. This is what happened to Sidney Crosby. Right? Sidney Crosby's had 3 or 4 documented concussions in his hockey career, but he had one really bad one from David Steckel where he got blindsided on a hit. He had to sit in a dark room. He couldn't watch TV for like a year and a half because the post-concussion syndrome was so bad, and it ended up being a chiropractor that fixed it and found the problem. It ended up being a problem in his neck that they ended up fixing. And, he was pretty pissed off at the Pittsburgh Penguins training staff that they didn't identify it and they didn't find it. And it took a, outside source like a chiropractor to be the one to find it. So all this like retirement and everything all really comes down to post-concussion syndrome. That's what it really comes down to. So, that's the big deal. Over 500 of you in the room, smash that like button, subscribe if you are new. That's really what this will come down to, is the post-concussion syndrome, right? So, anyways, there is that. Now, let's get into this. I want to talk about it. Bryce Young, should he come to Miami as a contingency plan? He's been benched. Should the Miami Dolphins make a move? Here is what Dan Orlovsky said about the situation yesterday.
He's done in Carolina.
Yeah.
Done in the NFL is probably rich for me. I do think his confidence and his belief in himself is completely gone. Someone will have to come trade for Bryce Young. I know Ben Solak has mentioned the Miami Dolphins being a location. That makes a lot of sense. No one else in my mind makes sense right now for him. He's going to have to rebuild himself from confidence. And also,
so you see, Benjamin Solak, he's now part of ESPN. He was the one yesterday on Twitter who suggested when Bryce got benched that the Miami Dolphins swoop in. And first of all, I got to say this is a huge compliment and testament to McDaniel's work with Tua. That's why you're hearing people suggest Bryce Young to Miami. Okay, number one, that's why, because of our coach. Tua, when you talk about the things that Tua does well, the anticipation, his arm talent, et cetera, processing and stuff. This was stuff Bryce did well at Alabama. Now, Bryce is obviously a little bit more mobile, but he's more in the Kyler Murray size range. Remember, Kyler Murray's 5'10", about 207. Bryce Young's 5'10", 204. So he's not someone you want running around with at that size at the NFL, because he's just not built to take that kind of beating. Now, I will say this. He's the type to slide or get out of bounds. You're not going to see him lean forward and take a hit to the head. He doesn't put himself in those precarious positions. Now, I'm kind of at a crossroads with this. The talent is evident, but you've got to rebuild this man confidence and mentally, confidence-wise and mentally, you got to build him back from the ground up. Do we want to put our coaching staff through that work again? Number one, because if you can build him back up, you got something. Now, there are certain things I see in Bryce's game I don't like. Like, you won't see him all cleats down. You'll see him sometimes almost step up to make the throw over the line because of how short he is. But here's my thing. This is where I kind of run into my crossroads here. If you're going to have to spend a third-round pick, right? If you're going to have to spend a third-round pick to go get this guy, why not just draft a guy in the third round and build him from the ground up? Mentally and confidence-wise, that guy's not damaged goods. You can start molding him and shaping him from day one in your vision for how a quarterback should be in this offense. See, that's where I kind of run into a crossroads. You got to give up a third round pick, but then you got to do a lot of work to build him back up. Whereas you could go spend a second or third round. I mean, if you could get my boy Jackson Dart in the second round, hallelujah, sign me up. But you gotta spend assets, and then you gotta spend hours upon hours of work building this kid back up. And in the same breath, you could use that asset you're going to have to trade and go get a guy who he's a blank canvas. It's for you to paint all over. It's for you to paint your picture with. That's where I'm at my crossroads. I know how talented Bryce Young can be if he gets upstairs fixed. I know he can be super talented. But the problem is, how much work is that going to take? And is it fair to our staff to ask them to do that again, whereas you could just use that draft pick and turn around and get a guy with a fresh start? That's where I'm at with the situation. Can Bryce Young be fixed? 110%. Is Bryce Young done? No, not right now. But I'll tell you this much. If he doesn't get traded to a team that believes in him and a coach that's working to rebuild him, that kid's going to be done. Because this is what I always say. Going back to when I started this channel, there were people in this community that used to tell y'all, remember when me and EM were saying, yo, you can't get Chase Young because of the scheme we run right now. And I mean, look at where Chase Young is right now. Thank God. But, right, we were saying you can't get Chase Young because of the scheme. Schemes matter. Situations matter. This is the perfect example of a situation mattering. Would CJ Stroud have flashed and shown how good he is right now? Because CJ Stroud is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL right now. He's phenomenal. I'm ready to get on board with that now. He's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, CJ Stroud. But CJ Stroud went into a much better situation from how that team was built, from the roster to the coaching staff. He's been put in a much better position to succeed than Bryce Young was put in, and it clearly shows. So, I mean, it is what it is. It just literally is what it is. That's where now, if I can give up a 5th or a 6th for Bryce Young, okay, let's have the conversation. But if I'm going to have to give up a 3rd round pick, that's where I kind of pause a little bit. Remember, if you got a good scouting team, Dak Prescott was drafted in the 4th round. Dak Prescott was not drafted in even the first 3 rounds. He was drafted in the 4th round. So if you got good scouting, you should be able to get someone. But where I'm at with this is, It's a hard decision. Do you give up a third or a fourth round pick for a guy you're going to have to put a ton of work into, not only just fitting him to your scheme and get him acclimated to what you want from a quarterback, but you're going to have to put a ton of work in from a confidence standpoint as well. So, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. If they traded a third or fourth round for Bryce, I wouldn't be mad. I would understand it because I have faith in McDaniel getting him mentally to where he needs to be. I have faith in Bryce's skill set in this offense where when he does get fixed upstairs, he can execute in this offense 110%. Plus, he adds you a little bit of mobility. Now, do you want that guy running a lot at 5'10", 204? No, not really. But at the same time, I would 110% be on board where if they decide, hey, we're going to spend a second or third round pick on a guy with a blank canvas that we can just build from the ground up. There's no inherited flaws from bad coaching that we got to fix, etc., etc. You know? Because maybe a guy like Drew Aller falls into that second or third round. You know, Riley Leonard could be there, you know, is going to be later, not going to be a first round pick. That'll be a later round pick. Garrett Green, Jalen Daniels, you know, there are going to be guys. Now, I was high on Connor Wegman, but he's probably going to return because Texas A&M is having a bad start with him. You know, Jalen Milroe in the second round. That could be very Jalen Hurts-esque in terms of you're taking the ceiling of the passer, right? Remember, Carson Wentz got signed all that money, but the injury concerns, they turned around to Jalen Hurts. Hell, you can make the example of the Kansas City Chiefs with Alex Smith and trading up to go get Patrick Mahomes. Now, I think that was a little bit more extreme where they needed to go get a number one right away. But, you know, because I don't expect guys like Carson back. I expect Garrett Nussmeier, who I love, to go back to school, but I don't expect guys like Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers and Cam Ward. They're probably, well, depending on Quinn Ewers' injury, but Cam Ward and Carson Beck, they're probably going to be the first two quarterbacks off the board potentially. I think Shedeur Sanders' attitude and the dad situation might drop him a little bit on boards, but he'll probably still go in the first round as well. But again, you know, I love Jackson Dart. I love Garrett Nussmeier. I do like Quinn Ewers' game. I really love Quinn Ewers' game. I'm hoping Jalen Milroe's ceiling is very interesting to me. I'm a fan of Drew Aller. So there's options in this draft. There are options in this draft. So you got to really weigh the risk to reward. And another question you got to ask yourself, if we are going to get a legitimate contingency plan to Tua Tagovailoa, do you want Chris Grier being the guy that goes out and gets it? Buddy, Matt Stafford's a Georgia QB, brother. You can't say that. Matt Stafford is a Super Bowl winner, and he's a Georgia QB, brother. So, it is what it is. It is what it is. We will see how it all goes moving forward. It's a very interesting situation. On the one side, you can understand if it's going to be like a fifth or a sixth or even a fourth, you can understand the move for Bryce Young. But if it's going to take a second or a third, is it better to use that second and third in the draft on a blank canvas? You can just build from the ground up. It's a legitimate conversation. It really is. So, Jess, shout out to Jess. She's in the chat. She says, I don't want Grier doing a single thing further for this organization. Oh. Oh man, you ain't a liar. Listen, Jess, I've said it before, I'll say it again, put me on record. If this thing implodes, even with Tua out, because of all the talent that's been acquired, all the money that's been spent, all the draft resources that's been used, if this thing doesn't work out and we don't make the playoffs, or I think even get a playoff win, I could very well see Stephen Ross pulling the plug on Chris Grier. All 9 lives are used, and then bringing in a new guy. I'm here for Louis Riddick, but I could see Grier being moved off of, new GM being brought in under the condition of you got to keep McDaniel and give him a chance. And then that's when, if this play calling issue continues with McDaniel, is the new GM going to come in and say, hey, you got to pass off the play calling. You got Darrell Bevell right there, who I've been banging on the table for since 2022, I think should be the play caller. I don't know. And yes, I understand making Darrell Bevell the play caller, that puts Frank Smith's job in flux, but Darrell Bevell's got a history. We saw what he did with the Seattle Seahawks. Okay? He made them a top 5 offense with Russell Wilson. So, I'm just saying. Guys, smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. Over 500 of you in the chat. I'm going to be back tomorrow night with Ball Game and Richmond Webb for the Finish Line. Thursday, we'll be live, me and Neil, for Fin Too Deep. Friday, we'll preview this game. Sunday, we'll have a live reaction and a post-game show. A lot coming your way. Once again, this episode was powered by BetUS. I want to thank them for sponsoring the show, and I want to thank all of you beautiful people for tuning in and supporting me. I love each and every one of y'all, and I will see y'all on the next one. Until then, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day. Have a fantastic rest of your day and make it the best possible.